Hello! So I have been planning to record a video on Wuthering Heights for a while because we're doing a read-along of the novel soon for Victober. But yesterday I imagine like many of you on Variety, that there's a new adaptation about to start filming. And this is starring Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. So I think it would be interesting for us to have a bit of a conversation about the novel and about why people adapt Wuthering Heights. So I would like to read one paragraph that caught my attention here. So this marks Lucky Chap and Fennell's third collaboration following 2020's Promising Young Woman and 2023's Saltburn. Fennell has also had a feature role in Lucky Chap's $1.4 billion grossing and Academy Award-winning Barbie movie, which Robbie produced and starred in last year. Wuthering Heights is in pre-production, gearing up for a 2025 shoot in the UK. So my first thought when I saw the photo, someone sent me this on Instagram, I thought, okay, she's doing like a radical new take on Wuthering Heights. Both Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi are Australian. Maybe she'll do like an Australian modern version of it. Maybe she'll change things up. But they are filming in the UK. There's not really a lot of information about what this adaptation will be like. And honestly, I feel that the reason they just announced the starring cast is because probably Fennell wants the reaction that she's getting right now, which is basically people being a bit shocked and maybe enraged at just how unsuited to their characters those two actors are. I have a lot of respect for Margot Robbie. I think she's brilliant. She's a brilliant actor. I'm sure she can do like a great take on a Victorian character, but it is really weird. We had this conversation, right, with the announcement of The Greys, which is that modern day adaptation of The Picture of Dorian Gray that Netflix is producing, and reportedly Basil and Dorian will be siblings, and Dorian's supposed to be a girl. They're changing Dorian's name, which, I mean, if you strip a story of its very essence, is it still an adaptation? I don't know, but this will be titled Wuthering Heights, so it's not just a work loosely inspired by the novel, in the novel. So this is really strange. So Catherine dies really, really young, right? Wuthering Heights follows Catherine's childhood and until her early adulthood, and she dies very young in the novel, right? She marries Edgar Linton, and she dies very, very young. Margot is beautiful, but she's in her mid-30s, and Catherine's youth is very important because, I mean, she's basically sacrificed for the sake of propriety and class pride. That's basically what happens, right? She tries to do the proper thing, to marry the right man, to do what would be becoming of her station, and that kills her inside because she really doesn't like Linton. And her dying young is very important to the story and to the whole plot of how Heathcliff becomes a very problematic person and even more vindictive than he already was from the beginning, which leads us, I mean, I already think that Margot is not like a great choice for Catherine, unless you were changing the whole thing. And then Jacob Elordi, I mean, what? So we have a long list of like directors and actors who either wanted to direct Wuthering Heights or that starred as Heathcliff. And throughout like the 20th century, we had a series of film adaptations and even soap operas and miniseries of Wuthering Heights, and it's been a constant in those adaptations that Heathcliff is often played by traditionally attractive and good looking, according to like Western Hollywood beauty standards, men. So men who are very pretty and handsome, according to like very, again, Hollywood centric standards of beauty, and men who are white. I think Heathcliff cannot be conventionally attractive in the first place, or maybe he can be very attractive but not in a white gazy kind of way. So you could have someone gorgeous playing him, but someone who wouldn't be considered gorgeous by white people in rural Yorkshire in the 19th century, you know? So, like, there are a lot of discussions, and I think this leads us to the discussion we've had, an adaptation in 2011, right, of Wuthering Heights that kind of changed that for the first time. We had a black actor playing, two black actors actually, playing Heathcliff in his childhood and playing Heathcliff as a man. So it was James Howson and Solomon Glave. And we had Shannon Beer and Kaya Scodelario playing Catherine. So that was the first time, right? This is a film by Andrea Arnold, and I remember there was a lot of discussion at the time around this casting choice. People were asking, okay, is Heathcliff meant to be black? Which is a fair question. So the issue of Heathcliff's racial difference, I think, presents itself more and more to us. I mean, if you are saying that you want to adapt Wuthering Heights in 2024, it is very strange to choose someone who looks like Jacob Elordi to play Heathcliff, because racial difference is such an important part of the plot and so much conflict arises from it. The reason that Heathcliff is ostracized by the Earnshaws has to do with class. It has to do with jealousy, of course, of Mr. Earnshaw's affections, but it has a lot to do with the way they perceive him racially. And while the novel is not clear on his race or even his ethnicity, racial difference is important, right? So Heathcliff is described as being dark-skinned, as being very dark, and then they make a lot of very problematic, right? Nellie and company make a lot of problematic descriptions of him as being dark-skinned, and that being very negative thing. At one point, he is called Little Lascar, which would suggest, so Lascars were usually Southeast Asian men who were working on the ships in Liverpool, which is where Mr. Earnshaw finds Heathcliff. So the Liverpool information could either mean that he was Southeast Asian or that he was black, descending from African enslaved people, because he was a center for the transatlantic trade of enslaved people. So he could be descending from an African person, he could descend from a Southeast Asian person. There have been claims of Heathcliff as being Romani. There have been claims that Heathcliff could have been Irish, because there is also a problematic perception of Irish people. But there are a lot of times throughout the novel where they insist on the darkness of his skin, which is quite important. That leads to a lot of prejudice and a difficulty of someone like Nellie, for instance, of empathizing with Heathcliff's suffering. And Nellie herself says at one point that his father could have been the Emperor of China and that his mother could have been an Indian queen, which suggests to us that Nellie doesn't really know what any of those people would look like. She doesn't know what makes an Indian person different from a Chinese one. So the element in common here is just this perception of racial difference. So to adapt Wuthering Heights, again, there are so many films, so many adaptations, and just say, yeah, I'm not interested in all that. Let's just put Jacob Elordi or Timothy Chalamet, you know. I think it's really odd because, again, this is probably the novel by the Brontes that has been adapted the most. So if you think you have something to add, she wrote the script, she's directing and producing. So if you think you have something to add, what is it? And why is this not being, like, announced alongside the cast? I know that Emerald Fennell probably wants to cause a sensation, like announcing this, she wants to spark this controversy, so we are biting right into that. But I think this is a conversation that we need to have, like, we need to hold people accountable if they are choosing to adapt a novel like Wuthering Heights and just putting really attractive, conventionally attractive white people to play someone like Heathcliff, you know? And Margot, as I said, is great, but Catherine Earnshaw. There are so many novels. If you want to adapt a novel, I wonder why people don't adapt other books that have, I don't know, characters that would maybe be more suited to the actors you want to work with, because clearly Fennell has worked with Margot on Barbie. She's not the director, but she was a part of that project. She worked with Elordi on Salburn, and I think it's fair enough. She can work with the actors she wants to work with, and if they want to work with her, great. But it is awkward, you know. You could adapt any book that fit the vision that you have, so why would you go into this if you don't want to deal with... And again, this is the problem with the Greys, that is like giving up. I haven't watched it, but like from the announcement you see that they are not exploring so much of what makes that work unique. And you have something like Persuasion of 2022 that purports to be a modern adaptation of Jane Austen's work, but completely erases the whole discussion of class that comes with Mrs. Smith's character. Mrs. Smith's not even there, basically. So is it really modern if you erase all that actually would be more contemporary to us? Like that woman who is struggling and alone and poor. It's basically the only poor character in the whole novel, and you kind of cut her from your script. Anyway, so I think these things that purport to be very modern are oftentimes actually quite conservative and reactionary. I cannot accuse Emerald Fennell's film because I haven't watched it, but like it's so disappointing. Like you could have a Wuthering Heights and cast someone like Dev Patel to play Heathcliff, you know, and I don't know who to play Kathy. You really need to be adding something. If it's just another adaptation with like the most good-looking people of your time playing the main characters, are you really adding something? So yeah, there's a lot of scholarship. There's this article on Bronte Studies that just goes over Wuthering Heights adaptations, discussing precisely that. What is it that is being added to the discussion at this point? But we have to wait and see, I guess. So let me know what your thoughts are on this announcement. And if you're excited for the adaptation that's coming soon. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, you could consider subscribing, please, and let's keep in touch. Bye bye.